Hello and welcome to Bad End Podcast. This is episode number 114. I am Josh Calixto, joined as always by my co-host Kyle Cooksdale. Kyle, how are you doing?
Hi, Josh. I'm doing all right. It's
Okay.
been a minute.
It's been a very long minute. If y'all didn't notice, we've been on a little bit of a hiatus due to Kyle putting out a video game called Cantata, which
I did.
Let's talk about that for a sec.
Sure.
What was that like? First of all, congrats. I've said this to you, but congrats. It's awesome. The game is looking super sweet. Like I was playing it and I felt like I was talking to Kyle again, you know.
You said like something weird on the Discord. It's like, oh, it's like meeting your kid's son.
It is.
Like, oh,
like,
that's like...
it's like, this is so Kyle, you know.
Yeah. I think we should introduce our guest too, so we can get into it. I don't want him just to sit around because he's also on the video, just being quiet.
Okay, let's give
being polite.
We are joined by a guest right now who I won't delay any longer. It's always hard to know like when to intro the guest, but this is
I could talk about Cantata for a long time, so I'm like,
you're right. I thought you were just gonna say, oh, it went well, and then we'll introduce.
It went well by. You're like, oh, Josh doesn't actually care, so I'll just say it went well.
Anyway, the guest today, a good friend of ours from back in the Kill Screen days, now over at Polygon. This is Toussaint Egan. Toussaint, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us what you're doing and where you've been, how you like, you know, just what you do.
Oh, thanks. So I'm Toussaint. I work as an associate curation editor for Polygon, which basically means that I'm in charge of finding cool and interesting art, games, movies, and the stuff like that, and just like introducing it to our audience. And I'm also the resident anime boy, so I also write about anime a lot. Yeah. So that's what I've been up to for the past year and a half now. It's been weird. It's been weird. It's weird to say that. It's weird to say that I work for Polygon. It's been even weirder to say that I've worked for Polygon for a year and a half. It's like, wow. It's been a fun.
I also think you're kind of like a thinkfluencer in the happening. You've got like I feel like your Twitter presence is very sort of curated, where it's the sort of like, it's not just you shit posting. You're kind of like trying to actually add value to the feed.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's nice to follow you because you're like, here's things that are cool and like pictures and yeah. I appreciate
That's hard to do, dude. That's like really hard to do.
Juice has been grinding on it for I feel like 3 or 4 years. It's just I know that's your Twitter presence, and it's just like every day, just a little bit, getting it up there, and then kind of slowly. Yeah, so I've appreciated that.
Of course, thank you so much.
A huge appreciation for that. Like, obviously, we're still playing games, right? Right, Toussaint? You still playing some?
Oh, absolutely.
Games? All right.
Oh yeah, I recently finished Citizen Sleeper, and I'm trying to inch my way into Hard Space Shipbreaker because I played that around the time when it first launched on early access. But since the 101 update, it's been hard to go back to it just because they wiped all the progress, and I understand why they did it. Yeah. But it's just like, I gotta save that for the weekend because I can't be doing that during the weekday. Okay, I gotta go to bed at some point. I gotta go to work in the morning. I can't do that.
Can't get off my job to start my digital job.
Exactly, it's basically a digital job.
Yeah, Hard Space. That's an interesting game. I was the same deal where I only played it toward the very beginning, but we'll probably revisit it. But yeah, I would love to talk, just shoot the shit about some anime with you later down the line. We're gonna jump into some video games in just a sec. First of all, I want to get to some housekeeping stuff. First of all, we put out a video on the Bad End YouTube for those listening to the podcast, mainly podcast listeners who haven't gotten the chance to check it out. It's a video essay. I'm trying to do video essays. I've got like a goal of doing 6 essays in 6 months, which is going to be tough, but
that's ambitious.
The second one is underway, almost finished. The third one is like already being written, and like I have a smaller topic for that one because this shit's hard.
It's a very good video essay, might I add. I did watch it. I loved it. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate it. Yeah. But yeah, if people could just like, if you like it.
I mean, do you want to say what it's about?
It's about Paradise Killer and Vaporwave, the two of which are intertwined very, very intimately. And it's just about the culture of vaporwave, the history, and how that ties into like what the game is trying to do. I learned a lot about vaporwave, learned a lot about Paradise Killer, and like just became such a huge fan of that game in the process. Like stuff that was I had already had in my mind, just kind of putting it in a more cohesive way like that and cutting it all together, just brought all that love and passion for it together. So it was really cool to put that out. It came out, I felt like it came out really good. So I'm just going to keep creating content, as it were. We got to have another conversation about that concept in a second. But yeah, just if you haven't gotten the chance, check out the YouTube channel, check out some of our past streams, check that out and give us a subscribe, because we're going to be putting out more good stuff on there. The other big thing is, if you can't tell on our stream right now, we have a new design. This is kind of just a preview of what you're seeing on the stream. We've got this new visual design, so that's going to be launching with this podcast episode when it goes live on wherever podcasts are found. So you'll see the new cover art soon. And we also have Bad End merch coming to the web, so you can finally rep Bad End on a shirt. Yeah, the merch is looking cool. It's exciting. I designed it myself. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that because it's but I mean,
it's great taste. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Designed it myself with direction from professionals
like me,
like Kyle.
I'm a creative professional.
Yeah, speaking of which, let's get back to Kyle here, because I really am curious. How was everything with Cantata? How's that going? How's it being received? How are you doing? How are you holding up?
It's going well. It's it's funny, like kind of releasing basically next to Gareth. We did Citizen Sleeper. We're sort of like release buddies. I think that Gareth was our releases were within like a week of each other. They also have like obviously a much bigger audience than After School does, but I think it's just been interesting watching Citizen Sleeper and then watching kind of Cantata, because I sort of feel like where Gareth was at, like, when they did In Other Waters.
Yeah.
I sort of feel like in that kind of place, because the game, like Cantata is, I mean, I'm not a millionaire, to be clear, but the game is like, it's doing well. It's finding like, it's a weird game. So if people who haven't know about Cantata, it's a character driven tactical strategy game set in a spiritual sci-fi world. It's like it is like effectively a strategy and logistics game that's got art style that kind of looks like Mobius or whatever, but it's like very deep. So I think that it's got enough like weirdness that we're finding people who are like really attaching to it. And there's also our Cantata's early access release. Like we have like a year-long roadmap. Citizen Sleeper is like out. But I think that what's there now is like a very solid seed. Like the game is like I think it's at like 90% positive on Steam, with I think like 40 something reviews. People have like there's like the map editor and then 3 campaigns in the game out of 9, and people I think on average probably have like 5 to 10 hours, which is what we would expect. But we're already seeing people who have like 30 and like 100 hours in this game and are leaving us these like glowing reviews. So I think it's this kind of thing that's like really finding its audience of people who understand that they want this kind of thing, and then it's kind of like disseminating through. So it's been sort of interesting to launch it, because the other thing too is that like the game launched effectively, weren't like no bugs, but there were like no game breaking bugs. So it launched, it was super stable. People love playing it. And I think just watching people play it and kind of like resonate with it as something that's really weird. I'm sure Gareth feels sort of similar for Citizen Sleeper. It's just been really cool to be like, oh, this is not just something that I think is cool in my head. There is some external validation there, and like seeing people put up, videos on YouTube or streaming it or whatever, has been really cool. So yeah, it's weird because it's it's out, but it's also the start of a longer road or not a longer road, but it's the start of a road to early access, from early access to 1.0. So it's getting a lot of feedback from the Discord, really kind of shaping the game to be the best version of itself. So yeah,
well, I mean,
it's going well.
Honestly, having played a bit of it now, it's like I can really honestly say that it's like there's nothing else like it out there. And I'm not saying that in like an it's weird sort of way, or that like, oh, it's different like sort of way. I mean like truly, like when I was playing, I was like, holy shit, the way that the art comes together with the way that the design works, and just like the way that everything is written. And if I'm going to make like a bad endish observation that I would make about like the average game that I play, I feel like with Cantata, like every game is recursive. Every game feels like it's built on like what other games have done. But I think that you did something really neat with Cantata, which is that it feels like you've almost, even with mechanics that have been in other games before, you're like approaching it through like new eyes as someone who's like building an entirely new system, entirely new game. So even if you're using things that like I have seen in another game before, like it feels fresh because there's like a sense of novelty with the way that it works in Cantata. And then along with just like the art and the way it's written, it's just such a fucking sick combo of how all this stuff works. And I'm just like excited to see where it goes, because I mean, again, as we were talking about with Gareth and whatnot, it's like you can only, I feel like when you're doing a very first launch, like there's so many lessons that you learn. Like think about how much Gareth has learned after putting out In Other Waters. Like you're going to learn, and it's going to continue to improve Cantata as well. So I'm like super excited to see where it goes. But even just this, what you've put out so far is like really like the combo of the aesthetic, what's going on aesthetically, as well as the mechanics, or stuff that I haven't seen before. So that's like typically one of the things that we praise on this show. So I mean, thanks, I do really dig that about it.
It's also funny because it's like, it's funny. This isn't like totally inside baseball, but like on the Discord, I think that the super culture has cultivated an audience of people that are very into stuff like Citizen Sleeper. Mm-hmm. And so we have a lot of people who are like, oh man, I just like played through all of Citizen Sleeper. Good job. Gareth is, for those who don't know, Gareth runs Heterotopia as part of the Superculture family, so they're kind of active in the Discord or whatever. So everyone's like, good job, Gareth, so cool, I love. And it's like Citizen Sleeper is very much like a Superculture game. It's like all the stuff that we'd like to talk about and kind of all the ideals we hold. And like Cantata is like not that. And it's funny kind of seeing people be like, oh, I'm gonna give Cantata a go next. And I'm like, you really don't have to, like, don't do it. Like it's it's a weird thing that is like pivoting around some like newer concepts for like logistics and strategy games. And we do like kind of not like trap people, but we do kind of catch people who come in for like the aesthetic and stuff, and are able to introduce them into a different style of gameplay that I think they would potentially, like if Cantata just looked like a World War II battle game or whatever, people wouldn't give it the time of day. So I do think it has that kind of like I don't know, not like cross media. It's got like it's able to cast a wider net of people who might be interested in it, especially because of like Artem's art and stuff. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I see like people in Superculture Discord being like, oh, I like Citizen Sleeper, and that's made by a Superculture person. I bet Cantata is like,
I mean, like, Citizen Sleeper was also on Game Pass. So
yeah, you do have to buy Cantata. But I think it's just funny because like, I don't know if either of you have like ever made anything that's like your own thing that you want to share with somebody. Like, I guess like we're all been writers, right? And you have people around you that like want to support you. So like I like grew up in the South, and so I've got these like Southern women that my mom talks to, and they're like, oh, I want to play his game. Can I download it on the iPhone? And it's like, you really don't want to play like.
Yeah, but I
appreciate this support,
I don't think it's the same thing with people. I don't think it's the same thing with Superculture people at all necessarily.
I guess what I'm saying is that it is a fucking strategy game. And if like you're not there for that,
we got some strategy gamers.
We got some strategy people. I think that's fine. I just think it's funny that people try to like show support and be like, I'll play your game, and I'm like, don't. Like,
they better fucking play your game. That's all I'm saying.
You. Like, it's not for you.
I mean, hey,
it's like Like, just imagine being the guy that like made RimWorld or something, and you're trying to like convince your like parents' friends at like a party in the suburbs to like play your video game, and it's like, or like Factorio, right? Like, no one's gonna like.
Yeah.
It's
No.
it's sort of like related to the like. This is a different conversation. We can end this, but like it's sort of related to that thing about like games that sort of do well on Twitter, as like sort of a their own sort of genre as a thing. And I think that when people assume that you have a game and you're making a game, that you're making something that's the equivalent of that. It's like, oh, I can play it on my iPhone. I don't have to like think about it or whatever. And you're making like a match 3 Candy Crush game. So when it's like, oh, I'm making a logistics and strategy tactical game, and they're like,
nice. Is that like Flappy Bird?
Yeah. I mean, it's also, I mean, I think so many times I got a lot of pent up bad end stuff, but there's also just this degree of like even explaining. I mean, I'm sure Gareth has the same issue as this in Sleeper, but like explaining Cantata to someone like doesn't understand games, which are the people who are like, I want to play your game. What's it like? And then you kind of have to like feel out the references. And I'm actually pretty consistently surprised how much most people have zero knowledge of strategy games at all. So the thing I often reach for is like Risk. I'm like, oh, it's kind of like Risk, and they're like, oh, okay, cool, and that's basically the end of the conversation, which is just, I don't know, whatever.
Well, what's your real comparison?
I say it's like Advanced Wars with logistics, or I'll say like Advanced Wars, or if people really know games, I'll say like it's kind of like Total War Civilization, but like a little bit more simple. Or I'll say it's like a 4X game. It's kind of like a 3X game. It's got a lot of very.
You got all the elevator pitches,
but it's
for sure.
Been doing it for a minute.
Yeah. Doing that whole grind.
But yeah, I mean, all that said, reception's been really good. We have a really great community. People are excited. People are building maps already in the map editor. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I'm so proud of you, man.
Thanks, Josh.
Oh, I'm so proud of you.
I do remember when the trailer dropped, you were like, bro, what?
That was my reaction when I was playing it.
That's Cantata.
I was like,
what?
I was reading some of like the tool tips and stuff, and I was like, Kyle wrote this 100%, dude. And then I was like doing the stuff, and I was like getting satisfaction out of doing like really random shit. I was like, oh, dude, you could put the guy on the fucking on the truck, and he's like in there,
truck, man. He's in there,
it's
bro.
like transportation, and I'm seeing the oil go from my refinery along the supply lines, and like this is so sick. And that's when I knew, like, I just felt like you were there with me, you know.
I was just sitting there watching you.
Anyway, we've been playing other video games as well. First, go check out Kyle's game on Steam. Thank you very much. Cantata.
Wishlist Cantata. I guess you can buy Cantata on Steam.
Yeah, purchase.
You don't have to just wish it anymore. You can just
you don't have to wish list it. But also, I kind of want to talk about some of the games you've been playing, maybe V Rising, because you also wrote a recent article, a recent piece for your blog that I want to talk about some of the themes of that.
Did you read it already?
Yeah, I read it.
Oh, damn, dude. It's only been out for like 3 hours. You just right on there. I appreciate the love.
But it's a good conversation to have here.
It is a good conversation to have.
Because, dude, you don't find blog posts like that anymore. I remember like 6 years ago, that shit was a dime a dozen. Nowadays,
I got some real think piece shit dropping on blog.kylecookstall.com.
You do not find the stuff of that caliber out there these days. At least in that volume, I should say. Yeah, let's talk about V Rising, and then we can kind of talk about the context of what your blog was.
Yeah. Juice, have you played V Rising?
I have not played V Rising. I have heard of V Rising, and I very much want you to describe to me V Rising.
I haven't played it either, and I'm in that boat too.
I mean, so I played a little less than 2 hours of V Rising, and it's hard to talk about it without talking about the thing I just wrote. But the pitch of V Rising is, it's like does ARPG stand for action RPG or adventure
Yeah,
RPG?
action
It's
Yeah.
RPG.
action, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Action RPG. Yeah. So V Rising is like an action RPG game that's in a open world server, and you can like build. So I guess so. You're a vampire, running around this open world. It's an instance. It's like a procedurally generated instanced world that you share with some number of other players, like on a a public PVE server. I think you can do maybe up to like 24, or you can have a private server. And you're a vampire and you're running around basically kind of like playing Diablo. And the kind of differentiating factor is that there is this strong crafting element where you can like gather resources around the map, and those resources allow you to like build up your castle. So you're kind of building this like persistent vampire castle in this like PVE world, while also effectively playing Diablo. So your castle is like giving you it's like gives you like persistent, it's kind of like acts as a way to give you persistent bonuses, as well as like have other just sort of like stuff. So if you go, it's like it's a base, right? You go back to your base, you resupply, you do some level up stuff, you do whatever. And it's kind of got this whole vampire theme. So you're making cathedrals or whatever, and it's like dark. And
this looks like Diablo, cool, except you also pick up wood.
Yeah.
And
basically
like stone,
Or if you want to be really generous, you can say it's sort of like Valheim meets Diablo. And so so this game is like blowing up Steam right now. It's actually by the studio that did Battle Right. So if you remember, I think like 2 iterations there was something called Battle Right, I believe. And then there was another one called like Battle Right Legends, maybe. But it's basically kind of like, Josh, you and I actually played this like forever ago. It was like, and it's an arena combat game where it's like teams of 2 or 3 people basically playing like a PvP ARPG game against each other. And so the studio has this like really core competency in like building really great ARPG style control schemes. And so V Rising is like the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's like the meat of it, which when I was playing Battle Right, where I was like, this is a really cool control scheme in that it's like, it's if you think about a MOBA, except instead of being controlled by clicking all over the screen, you use WASD, right? You don't click everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So then all of the actual skills and abilities you use are like skill shots that you aim. Yep. So you're not just clicking on stuff, you are actually aiming things and shooting at stuff. So it's sort of like you might think of almost like a twin stick shooter, but I would say it's almost like a better twin stick shooter sort of scheme for playing a game, because you have more skills and abilities that you can map out. But I always thought like, damn, this would be kind of cool if it was transported onto some kind of
vampire theme and an open world PvE
game.
World.
Yeah, like Torchlight.
Josh, I have news for you. Looter. That game exists. And it's called V Rising, and my takeaway is that it's fine.
Yeah, it looks like that.
It's fine. Like I was like playing it and I was like, what? Like it's kind of got the same like I don't know, the kind of like fervor that strikes something on. This is the kind of game that we reflect on at the end of the year and say, damn, this is one of those games that when we talk about the surprise hits that no one's expecting, that hit and then that become like defining features of the year, like Valheim was last year.
Yeah.
This is kind of like that game for 2022. It seems right now like some giant like 1 million CCUs, like, it's a ton of people are playing this game or something.
Right.
Maybe not 1 million CC. I think it's like it's sold 1 million copies or something. But anyways, it's like doing super well, and it's like tearing up Steam, and I was like, oh, I kind of like these things. I like tried it, and I was just like, so I played this game for like a little less than 2 hours. And then like some other things are happening right now. So I don't know if you all saw like the Grit gameplay, the like NFT blockchain Western battle royale thing. Then there was this guy like posted on LinkedIn where he was like, the year's 2030. You just checked your RuneScape mobile app and saw that your friend dropped you like 6 diamond ore. That ore can be used in this like space game that's coming. It's just like bullshit, like VC hypothesizing about like the future. And then just some like other shit that was like floating in the air where I was like, it's time to post. I like sat down and I was like, let's fucking crack open a beer like it's 2012 and write a think piece. And I did, sort of inspired by all this stuff. And the kind of the thrust of the piece is like, what the fuck is going on with game design? Like, why is V Rising so popular? Or like, why does V Rising exist? It's not just about that, but like, basically the stuff I'm kind of bringing up is that there's a certain like design conservatism. I called it like game design mimetics that is very, very backwards looking from a game production standpoint, in part due to the kind of precarity of game production in general, especially like a higher end, where the best way to potentially hedge your options for making money on a big game is to do stuff that like already worked. And then that was the piece I cited at the very start of my piece was this piece about WoW Classic just kind of existing, and that's like I think it was like a 13-year time differential between WoW releasing and WoW Classic, and then also just in writing it, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 is currently coming out, which is about, I think that was like 9 years ago, or no, that was 11 years ago, and then today the Uncharted remake launched, which is like 9 years ago, and it's just like, what the fuck is like, why are we seeing so many remakes? Why are
And that Last
like,
of Us.
Not,
why is
yeah, not to mention The Last of Us Part 1 that was announced today.
The Last of Us. Oh wait, really?
Yes,
Did you see
really?
this?
Oh my god.
And it literally
Yes.
looks exactly like the fucking original game.
It's just
Kyle,
like,
you are speaking this into existence. You need to stop.
oh my god. I literally published this during the Summer Game Fest, and I was like, damn, I'm publishing this during like the biggest fucking circle jerk of the year. Yeah. So basically, I don't want to talk about. I want to talk about specific unless you have specific stuff. But the piece is like, what the fuck is going on with game design? And so my general thesis is kind of looking at the general like economic precarity of games production as this thing that kind of forces more conservative design, and sort of thus closes the window of possibility for the future, almost to the point where there's like a I don't know, almost like a design singularity that then games just kind of like collapse and the world moves on. So it sounds more thinky than it maybe actually is, but I did enjoy writing it because listeners of Bad End know that I've talked in the past about like culture being over. So this is kind of me actually saying more about what I mean when I say that. And as we saw today, literally happening or ending at least as we speak.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that resonates with you at all, Toussaint. Like,
I think it
have you had
does.
that vibe?
Yeah, I as somebody who has to keep up on Marvel television shows and Marvel movies, and I look. I'm not going to get into some like culture war about like admonishing or just like dumbing that stuff down. It's just like, it just feels like, haven't I seen this before? Didn't I see this like last week? Didn't I see this like yesterday? I start to feel that feeling a lot.
Yeah.
They're covering that stuff. Yeah.
And I mean, it's weird because Kate Bush has a single charting,
Running up that hill, running up that hill.
and it's like, because it was on Stranger Things,
Yeah.
which is in fucking like season 4 now.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't know that.
There was this great I think it was Venkatesh Rao maybe who said this, but somebody in the like thinky less wrong sphere of the internet mentioned that every time a new Netflix show drops, it's like our collective society gets like a patch and like updates, because there's weirdly like disseminated culture, but then there's also this weird monoculture where like everybody saw the Queen's Gambit, or everybody that's like interested in seeing stuff saw all the same stuff. And so you have this weird thing where like, yes, there are 60 million streaming services, but also it's dominated by a small number. And like when Netflix puts out a season of something, it's like filtering all of that into the collective consciousness of society, such that like Kate Bush can chart in fucking 2022, which is like,
Yeah.
what?
Like it's so, I mean, it's also strange too, because I feel like these past few years I've really aged, you know, where I think about how like 2018 was like 5 years ago or 4 years ago or whatever. And it's like, wow, I was like young in 2018 and now I'm like old, which is like fucking weird, you know, like, and it's weird because my window of that happening was like right when the pandemic started, basically. So like it feels especially like I just fucking hopped in a chamber and came out and all of a sudden I'm old, you know.
Dude, I feel like part of the reason that I was off on hiatus was because like we bought a house.
Yeah.
And like, and so we left New York City to like move upstate in New York for like almost 2 years. And it just sort of feels like I was 27 and then like the like guillotine came down and now I'm like 31.
Yeah.
And
it's such a fucking weird thing. And like part of it is 100% the pandemic, and part of it is this like weird cultural freeze that was, I think, exacerbated by the pandemic. But also part of what I'm kind of getting at here is that it's also weird because I feel like I should feel more left out than I actually am. When I think about it, I haven't actually, dude, do you know when the last time I watched like a normal fucking TV show is? Like, it must have been maybe Squid Game. That's like the last big event TV that I saw. And before that, I don't really even know what the fuck it was, because I've just been watching like 20-year-old anime. And it's weird because people will still just talk about new shit, right? And it's like, oh, did you see the new Stranger Thing? Oh no, I like saw the first 2 seasons. And people were like, oh, it's gotten way worse. But that's still the conversation, and you still like have a baseline understanding of what Stranger Things kind of is. So it's like, right. I'm not like completely locked out of that conversation, but it's like a new Pokemon game comes out. It's, even if I didn't play it, it's like, I know exactly what fucking Pokemon is. I'm never going to feel left out of the Pokemon conversation because they just added a fucking couple new Pokemon to the thing. Like, I'm never going to feel locked out of the Ninja Turtles conversation, the fucking Thor conversation, the goddamn, like, Sonic conversation. Like, it's all just happening over and over again. And whereas I think a part of it is that our generation has been so stingy about, like, not letting things go. And being like, oh, we want more Sonic, we want more Mario.
I think it's like the generation above us, though. It's like the people that are like 10 years older than us that are like in cultural power, and we're able to like Netflix didn't exist 20 years ago for someone that was our age to like rise to like the top or whatever. So that's why I don't know if you touched on this. Actually, I haven't watched your video essay. I'm sorry. I did watch an early draft of it, but I don't remember if like you talked specifically about like Vaporwave's like thing with 80s aesthetics. And there's something about like this like weird like eclipse or arc that gets drawn between like 80s like Ready Player One shit and Vaporwave. So you've got like Vaporwave at the time, right, is like the biggest, I don't know, it's like a big deal underground music thing that feels sort of like in some ways forward looking. But then its arc comes back to like also remediating like 80s culture. And it sort of feels like the past 10 years have been those 2 points in time kind of like moving more and more close together, where the range of experience started at like, okay, well, we can remediate culture from 1980 to 2015. And now it's like 1986 and 2011. And now it's going to be 1990 to like 2004. And then it's just kind of like this squeeze, like, the fucking, what's the new like battle, the new like Smash Bros game by let's like Cartoon Network shit?
Oh, like Nickelodeon something.
There are two. There's Multiverse. There's Multiverses.
I'm thinking Multiverse.
And then there is the Nickelodeon Battle All Stars thing.
Yeah.
That those are happening at the same time. It's just like, okay.
So like Multiverse, let me pull this up real fast. Like, Multiverse on the cover of the page right now on the website is fucking Shaggy from Scooby-Doo.
Multiverses.
And like Bugs Bunny. Like, how much fucking cultural capital? This is like a big game that's being made by fucking WB, and they're like, the person to pitch this game with is fucking Shaggy. And I'm like, what like 12-year-old has
and
any
not just
interest
Shaggy.
in Shaggy.
Not just Shaggy, Ultra Instinct Shaggy. A meme that was then retroactively like adopted by Warner Brothers. Are you aware of this?
No, I'm
No,
not.
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's basically just like this weird like sort of fusion of Dragon Ball Super.
I did not.
But
see
if
this.
like Shaggy was in this, and that's what his superpower is in this game. That's his like ult. He turns into like Super Saiyan Shaggy.
Oh my god. Well, like even like Nickelodeon All Stars, right? Like Avatar: The Last Airbender, fucking Danny Phantom, Ren and Stimpy. Like these are shows that have not been on air for like the past decade, and Nickelodeon is like, we're gonna make a new game. And even though we're Nickelodeon and like a kids brand and basically show like live action TV during prime time, we're going to like make a show about all these old characters because like we're basically the audience of our life. Like it's fucking weird, man.
I don't really know even where to go with this because it's fucking grim at times. But I don't know. The big thing with vaporwave is that like it gets you into that mode of a lot of I think media, which is like you don't have to think about anything when you're doing this, and it's just like turn off your brain and enjoy, right?
Right.
Where everything is just that, where it's like playing V Rising, you're just we were literally just watching the gameplay on here, and it's like there must have been 5 minutes out of like 10 minutes of just someone clicking on rocks, and it's like they get
I was
5,
like just
10,
sitting there
15,
like chopping
20
trees
stone.
down
Yeah,
for like 5 minutes. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, it's like
I was like, this is stupid. Like this is like I'm getting sad playing this game that I'm just sitting here like I'm trying to have like a good experience playing a game for like the 2 hours after my job, and I'm like fucking chopping trees down, and I'm like, no, it's fun the first time you chop down a tree, but then like, you know, the 60th game that's like chop down trees to get lumber. Then you have to take the lumber to the sawmill to make planks. Planks you use to make the stuff in your castle, and that produces sawdust that you can then It's just like,
dude, and it's also so fucking funny seeing like the creators and the directors who are forced to make this stuff. Like I just watched the Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie. Which is directed by Lonely Island. It's a Lonely Island movie, which I love Hot Rod, so
Hot Rod's the best movie
ever.
It
made sense, but it's so sad. Like you can hear the people who direct every single one of these fucking movies, whether it's Christopher Nolan doing Batman 3 or whatever, The Dark Knight. That's what it was called, right? And The Dark Knight Rises and shit. How it's been more than a decade that we've been doing the fucking theme about how like
sad Batman.
No, I'm talking about the like the gritty reboot theme that's always like,
oh yeah,
it's a cycle. It like a story about how stories like are like breaking the cycle and shit like that. This like meta storytelling of like sometimes like nostalgia is bad for us. Like the Star Wars thing. Star Wars did it where it was like the Kylo Ren thing. He's like obsessed with Darth Vader, and it's like, oh, maybe like being obsessed with the past is bad. How many times have we seen different directors try to deal with this shit? And it's the exact same thing, and you can basically hear them saying like, help me, let me fucking out of here, bro. I don't want to do this reboot of a reboot of a reboot. They're all doing the exact same thing. It's the exact same fucking story, but you can't escape it because it's all the same shit. And that's what this Chip 'n Dale was actually fun in, that it was like part of it was that, but it was also just like having fun with the whole thing and just like messing around, which is just a Lonely Island thing in general. But it's like that same, even the story about recursion is recursive in and of itself now. It's like, how many times can you possibly make the same commentary on what it's like to remake the same movie 5 times in a row? You know,
this is sort of like it's
not meta anymore. Like this is just what everybody does.
And like the thing that I wrote, I sort of talked about how like this game design feels like locked in basically in a lot of the design is now just sort of like meta design, which is like reconfiguring the sort of agreed upon mechanics to try to produce something that feels new without actually like changing the underlying stuff. Like the thing that really fucking sent me in V Rising was like I like did the initial tutorial stuff and I was like chopping fucking wood down. And then one of the tutorial things was like get your gear level to 12. And I was just like, fuck
Why?
this. Like
Why?
well, not only why, but like the concept of like a gear level was like before as conceived is like it was sort of an abstract way to describe a general power level of a character. So you had like
and they weren't even
armor
like
and,
within the game before.
it wasn't
Like
in the
you had
game.
to
It
like
was
put
just like
your gear into like a website, and then it was like, oh, your gear is around. Like if I was to like
it would like
crunch
it would be
the
like,
numbers,
oh, you could
it's I would give it
You're
about like
like,
a
I
10
have
out.
some like
Yeah.
I have some way of understanding my general power outside of my level, especially when stuff has like, you know, varying stats that do I think my epic breastplate is like puts me at this level where I could actually fight this monster. And it mattered. So like not only did it matter more or not only was it more abstract back then, but it also mattered more because your gear level like would literally I mean not your actual level, but like the actual your I don't know, your ability to like withstand hits, roughly described as maybe your gear level, would actually be like a hard or soft lock on like doing a boss or something where it's like I shouldn't spend 20 hours on a Saturday night trying to run Molten Core if I'm not strong enough to survive a hit from this person. Or like a people would call it like an armor check basically, where there's a big initial attack that's meant to basically wipe players out. V Rising is like, oh, you know what? At level 2, you need to care about a gear level. And I'm like, fucking no, I don't. Like, if I have to care about a gear level right now, your game is fucking broken because this is stupid. Like, I'm not going to sit here and try to like craft shit tier bone armor that I'm going to get rid of in 5 minutes when I find the next tier of armor and that my gear level has to go from 11 to 12. Like, fuck that.
Dude, Loop
So I
Hero.
was just like, I'm
It
done.
sounds
I was
like
like, I
Loop
don't fucking
Hero
care.
as a real
Yeah, it's like
video
some
game.
Loop Hero. I mean, it's like worse than Loop Hero because, I mean, oh, fuck. Loop Hero, man. Anyways, I was just, but like that's the type of shit that was just like, it's like, I also quoted like Keith Burgun, who did like Jim Wizard's Tactics, and he's working on something else now. I forget the name of it. But he like had this piece on like aesthetic gotchaism, which is this concept of kind of taking gotcha mechanics and applying it to a lot of games. And one of those things he talks about is kind of like the commodification of design, where like everything just gets a stat. Like there's nothing in V Rising where it can just be a thing. It's like gotta have a number. So you can't just have gear, it's gotta have a gear number. And then your gear like has to level up. And then you have to, it's just like, yeah. So this is again, I mean, I had to post, Josh.
Years ago, Kyle used to say people don't care about game design, and I got really upset because I was like, people do care about game design. But now when Kyle says people don't care about game design, now I'm like, yeah, you're kind of right.
You don't care about game design.
That reminds me of like somebody who told me in college, we were having a conversation about something, and they were like, nobody cares who makes things. And I was just like, I care who makes things. That's why I write about stuff. And now, as I get older, I just like, I read Twitter, I read the comments, and I'm just like, it's really like staring into the void.
Like, dude,
no, I have to steel myself against this.
It is legitimately wild, like how many people do not care about who makes things. Like, there's no connection. There's no like concept that a person or that a group of people made like objects. Like, and it's weird because like there are such, even like stuff that you consider like auteur cinema or whatever. It's like people don't know that. Like people are like, oh, have you heard of this movie Men? Or have you heard of this movie?
Yeah.
What's the fucking Cronenberg one?
Or like the Northman, right? The Northman is probably the one that's got the most like mainstream maybes on it.
Well, I mean, Alex Garland is pretty big as far as like the impact, as far as like how big the stuff he's done has gotten.
Or like, do you all know who did Everything Everywhere All at Once?
The Daniels, yeah.
Yeah, I had never. I didn't know
Daniels,
who the Daniels
yeah,
were.
the Daniels who did Swiss Army Man, and they also did the
music
video for Turn Down for What?
Yeah, and before that, they they like the Daniels have been like tearing up Vimeo since Vimeo was fucking around. They did the Big Red Ball short film. They did Turn Down for What. Like they've been like producing really interesting like viral hits on Vimeo for fucking
I
ever.
did not know they did
well
Swiss
Josh
Army
guess
Man.
what, no one fucking cares who makes shit. Like,
I saw the Daniels thing and I was like, who the fuck is Daniels?
Who the fuck is Daniels, bro?
This mononym motherfucker.
Yeah, like that nobody cares, right? And like you watch like you go back and watch like the Big Red Ball short film and you're like, oh yeah, obviously it's just them. Like it's all the same shit.
Yeah. But with regards to design, it does feel like so many games right now are just that vibe. It's like it's vibe design where it's just what's going to give you like 30 hours to just fucking vibe and just crunch shit and crunch numbers and just chill. And I'm kind of, it's weird because like I'm not here to say it's bad. Like this is a sign of the fucking crumbling of humanity. But I do feel when I play these types of games, there's something deep inside of me that knows that something is wrong here. Like when you eat chicken McNuggets and you're like,
go on.
And you're
when
like,
you're eating chicken
hell
McNuggets.
yeah, dude, this owns. And then you've got your sauce of choice and you dip it and you fucking take a bite and take a sip of your Coca-Cola, and afterwards you're just like, you finish all your nugs and you're just like, what the fuck did I just do?
This happens to me when I'm living Moss. Same thing, man.
When you're getting that
Mexican
Mexican pizza, dude, you can't even buy that
back.
shit anymore. They put the pizza in the vault and then now they're bringing it back.
That's the cancellation of the future, bro. They're like, Mexican pizza's back.
The phrase, they put the pizza in the vault.
It was in the vault, dude.
The Taco Bell vault.
Would send a Victorian child into a seizure. Like, what the fuck are you talking?
One thing like on like the vibe stuff was there was I also quoted like Kyle Chayka. We should try to get Kyle on the podcast sometime. He'd be interesting to talk to. But he was like the guy that like coined the term airspace. Like this sort of Airbnb-ish aesthetic that it's just now every coffee shop. It's like clay pots, big, plants, big windows, pastel, like whatever. And he wrote this book on minimalism. Anyways, he writes for New Yorker now, and he was talking about he had a piece a while ago, and he's been writing about like vibes a lot for the past probably 2 years. It was talking just about like vibes content. And there's something like about, and he's brought this up too, but like this sort of like concept that we only kind of get a culture that's really geared towards like vibes content when like, I think when the vibes are generally bad. Like you fucking scroll through Twitter and it's like, oh, democracy is collapsing and there's no future because of the climate shit. And you're like, no one sits down and is like, oh, after like ingesting that, I'm really down to just fucking run my nose into the ground by playing some really thinky like game. Like that's just not a thing. So I think that the sort of attitudes in general, because like I also had this point that you're talking about when I was playing V Rising, Josh, where I was like, this game is fucking stupid. Is this the fucking stupid game I want to spend my time on right now? Because it could be. I was like, I could totally spend all my like spare hours just like fucking around in V Rising. And I was like, maybe I'll try like the Elder Scrolls Online or something. Well, but I think that there's sort of like a general attitude of like, I don't know, society that actually rises stuff like V Rising to say like, this is about as much as we can handle right now. Like too much shit is going on. Like V Rising is what we can do. That's what I can reckon with.
And it's
after like working at my dead end job or, losing health insurance.
I mean, and I feel that
gun
like
rights pass
very frequently where I just want that. I've said multiple times on this show, I just wanted a brain off game.
The brain off. And, yeah. I was thinking of you.
And it's like, it's funny too, because Elden Ring was like the game where it was like, it's so not vibes. Dude, that game is not, it's the most Zero not vibes. A vibe
the
game
loathsome dung eater is not a vibe.
Tarnished.
I was just, after that game, I was like, I need to play a fucking JRPG. I need to play something vibey right now. Because I cannot do this. I can't do this heavy shit right now. I mean, granted, obviously loved Elden Ring, but it's also, I think we do this false conflation where we call it escapism. And I think we used to call it I think it used to be appropriate to call this escapism, but now I feel like it's less ambitious than escapism even. Where we're not even looking for a chance to escape. We want to escape into it's like this fetal position.
You want to go backwards.
We want to go into
like what I was writing about.
Yeah, we want to go into the cocoon. It's like we don't want to escape. We want to go to the safe, familiar place, which is dark fantasy that's like looks sort of cartoonish, and you click on rocks and build stuff and click on monsters. And just there's not really any repercussions when you die. You raise your numbers. They will always go up if you keep clicking, and you will always be rewarded. And like you're not really escaping. You're escaping from the anti vibe, but you are going into something very
really
familiar.
Postponing the vibe.
We need a vibe check. Need a vibe check. Yeah.
The world of vibes, dude. World of vibe.
There was this like. Speaking of Elden Ring, there was this great the New Yorker also recently profiled a LARP designer. Oh no, they were talking about the Star Wars Starliner Hotel. Do you all know about this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, down in fucking Florida, they basically built it's effectively a giant Star Wars LARP. Like more so than the park, but you pay like $3,000 and you get a ticket to like go on a starship LARP effectively for like two I think it's like 2.5 days. It's like I think it's like 2 nights and 2 days or something, or I guess it's 3 days and 2 nights. Anyways, so you pay and you basically go into a starship. I think it's called like Starliner or something.
Galactic Star Cruiser.
That sounds like that might be what it is. And you go and it's basically like if you imagine, the most intense Disney character thing that you've ever experienced at Disney World, if you've ever gone, times like 1,000. Like you're just living in a Star Wars world for 3 days, right? So the New Yorker profiled kind of this experience and then also was talking to one of the kind of designers of the experience. And what they were sort of talking about was like, I guess like LARP culture has a really strong root in like Scandinavia, I think specifically Sweden. And what the person said in the article was that like a lot of Scandinavian LARP would often be like very emotionally distressing. Like it'd be this thing that would make you cry and feel sad and maybe even feel punished a little bit. And the person was like, listen, it was okay because in Scandinavia, they're like, we had too much food and like too many jobs and like everyone was doing fine. Like they were like, our society was doing so well that we had to have this outlet to like experience actual like trauma effectively. And that was like, that produced like a productive emotional cycle. And I sort of think about that like a little bit with Elden Ring, where it's like, for some people, like I don't know, like white people, our life is generally like going okay. But something about the sort of like flagellation of Elden Ring is almost like doing a really like mean LARP. Cause you're like, finally I get to feel some like oppression. Like fucking, like I just sail through life every day and everyone just gives me raises and I just get all the whatever. And finally in Elden Ring, someone can tell me that I'm a piece of shit or like a tarnished or something.
Maidenless.
I'm maidenless.
You are maidenless.
I can be maidenless in Elden Ring.
This hotel looks weird as hell, by the way. I'm kind of... The vibe is off.
The vibe is way off.
This is not a vibe at all. Blue lady speaking. Oh, that looked cool. But I wouldn't want to live there. Would I want?
What about for 3 days? Not $3,000.
Certainly not for 3 days. 3,000.
It was like a constructed like neighborhood in Florida themed around Disney. I think it was called Paradise Disney.
Oh yeah, that's also a thing.
That's a real thing. And
that's a real thing.
It had its own like tax code or something like that. I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah, Disney is trying to like build basically like something that's like somewhere between like a retirement place and like a Disney park.
Yeah.
I mean, the crazy thing about that, right, is that like everybody wants that. Everybody wants the outcome of that, which is that everyone wants to feel like being part of a community that supports them and helps them be the best people they want to be.
But you got to
Doesn't
go
want to
through
be run by
you got to go through a
Disney.
corporation to do that, apparently.
Yeah, that's like the shitty part, right? Is that like the vision is salient because it's like people are fucking disaffected, and like all people have time for is like vibes content. Like you're checking in after your shift job and you want to like play some bullshit iPhone game for 15 minutes and not have to worry about. You want to just like Josh said, just be brain off. Fucking, I don't know, man.
Not to get to anime too early, but we can come back to games. But this kind
I
of
want
goes
to know. I want to know. Toos, what are you playing?
What am I playing right now?
We got to get that out of the way.
Just yeah,
He's
just
like bullshit anime.
Hard Space Shipbreaker right now. It's like I'm just like inching
Nice.
my way through that. So yeah, that's what I'm. There's not really anything concrete on the horizon that I'm really looking forward to. I have been keeping track of this one game by a solo developer who like their entire like professional name is like Enigma Studio, and the game is called Echostasis. The demo for that came out last year, and it has been like my most anticipated game of this year. I'm looking forward to when they finally release that. Yeah.
Echostasis.
That sounds tight.
Yeah.
I gotta check that out.
Do you feel like I'm interested? We can move on, but I'm sort of interested in your opinions and thoughts on games after like, because you were with Killscreen when we were with Killscreen, and Josh and I have both obviously like defected from games journalism, but you're still like in it to a degree, obviously.
I am adjacent to it. Like I'm more clued into like service journalism centered around like streaming services and like whatever sort of like weird things like sort of like pop up my radar that I want to put on the site. Like I am adjacent to like what's going on in games right now, but I'm just not as hooked into it. Like I'm more of like my sort of interaction with games right now at this point is just like the few game developers that I follow on Twitter, and I track their status, and if they like retweet something that's cool, then I sort of like follow up on that. But like as far as like broader trends, I don't want nothing to do with that. I just want to play like my little games that I think are really cool, like the little niche things that like satisfy me.
That's a good way to exist, I think.
Yeah.
In the space.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say about the piece that I wrote was I was quoting one of my favorite articles I ever read, which was the guy who did Steam Spy wrote this article called "Your Target Audience Doesn't Exist," and it's basically like it's got a lot of really great pull quotes in it. But one of the things he talks about is if you actually look at like demographics of Steam, or like specifically like buying habits of people on Steam. It's like something like less than 1% of people on Steam actually buy multiple games, and that number roughly equates to like 1.8 million people or something. So even though Steam is like 250 million users, when you're releasing a game, you're effectively only your audience is effectively like 1.8 million people, maybe. Like it's not because most of those people on Steam are like playing Counter-Strike, they're playing Rust, playing Team Fortress, or they're playing like Dota. Effectively, people don't actually like buy games, and so I'm interested, like from your perspective, as you sort of get older. I think that maybe like 20 years ago we could say that like, oh, Toos is getting older, he didn't like playing games anymore. But also like I don't know, like I still think, Josh, when we talked to your cousin like when they were in high school about like what stuff they play, and like I look at what's popular now, like Fortnite and Roblox, it's like I don't really get the sense that like based on like that post and then just general, I don't know, habits of what's popular, that people are just playing a lot of stuff generally. Like most people, most of the time are just playing like one or two games, maybe a year. I don't know if you like feel that, or like, I mean, you're obviously close to people at Polygon. As people get older and sort of, I don't know, like, do people still play games? Do people care?
People still play games, but as for me, it's like I feel like I've been a gamer for so much of my life that I know now, like, what are the things that I am attracted to? What are the concepts? What are the sort of genres that I know that I really like clue into? And it's like, and if I just don't find any games that are sort of like tapping into that, then I'll always go back to the well of like my my Steam library. I'll just like pop something on. It's like that I just bought on a random whim because it was on a Steam sale and just see if I like it. But as far as like new stuff, like immediately coming to mind, I'm just like, no, not really. I mean, I'm looking forward to um, let's see. I'm gonna open up my wish list right now. My wish list that I've been organizing this stuff. Like, let's see, like Echostasis is towards the top of there. Memory of a Broken Dimension. I don't think that's ever going to come out, but I still every day I leave
Every
a
day,
can.
just like maybe today's the day.
Every night I leave a candle by my windowsill and be like, I hope that Memory of a Broken Dimension comes home. Radio the Universe. That's like a game that was that was funded in the Kickstarter heyday before Hyper Light Drifter. That's apparently still in development, so I'm looking forward to that. And like Routine, that got like showed at the
I got a trailer like today.
They got a trailer today. It's been in development for like over a decade.
I thought it was done.
I was the only person in the work Slack that was like, yo, Routine. I'm just like, it's been in development for a decade. They don't remember that. And there's like Bomber's Cyberfunk, which is basically like Jet Set Radio, but for now. Yeah, those are the things that I'm sort of like into right now.
I feel like
so you're on like the long shot.
Oh, I'm on the long shot. Yeah. I'm looking.
You're like on like the Apple Arcade launch V1 core games that were like indie games that looked really cool like 7 years ago that have just disappeared from the public eye.
But I almost think this has become kind of like the normal way of experiencing video games. And I mean, I can't speak for every gamer out there, but I do get the sense that most people have their, and even this is just like looking vicariously through my little brother who was on this show a long time back. It feels like a lot of people have their like 1 or 2 platform games that they're really into at any given point, whether it's like Final Fantasy 14 or Valorant or whatever that one big game, Modern Warfare or Warzone or whatever. And they have that like one big thing where they're kind of like social and they play that game a few times a week or maybe every night. And then they have like the peripheral things that they're looking at or want to get into that are like along their style and what they like and what they're getting into and what's the flavor of the week type game. And that's how I think the average game diet operates nowadays, which, I mean, the wheels of this were set in motion a long time ago as we've talked about like games as platforms and whatnot. But that reality has kind of come to fruition now where a lot of people have their one platform game that they go to and with some little side pieces that they come back to time and try out new stuff. That's how I've noticed I've been playing games. But it seems like a model that is in play right now. But I played a couple other games. I played Tales of Arise and I played Yakuza Like a Dragon because they were both JRPGs that I had been interested in it. And yeah, they're pretty cool. If you like JRPGs, check both of those out. Yakuza Like a Dragon is the one that is Yakuza as a JRPG instead of as a beat 'em up.
I've been meaning to check out the Yakuza.
That sounds cool. I didn't realize that was like the pitch.
Yeah, it's all your characters are JRPG characters, but it cheekily puts the systems within the Yakuza kind of like universe. So you have summons, which is just stupid as fuck in a game that actually takes place in a very realistically rendered Tokyo and or Yokohama. But you summon like fucking lobsters and crawfish and like BDSM baby men and like weird boxers.
Incredible.
It is pretty. It's honestly pretty incredible. Like the main character, like one of his things is that he's talking about how he likes RPGs and he envisions his life as an RPG where like you got to get better, and it's part of his whole like shonen attitude. That makes him such like a likable character, but it factors into the game and it makes it more interesting and more fun. I really dig it. David says Yakuza Like a Dragon is sick. I played 15 hours and will probably never finish it because who has the time though? Yeah, it's a pretty long game, as people may or may not know, Yakuza games can be pretty long. It's very soap opera like in that the stuff that happens is like just gets constantly bigger and bigger, and the stakes get higher and higher. So I think that's what kind of kept me in. I probably had about 40 or 50 hours in that thing, so I played a good amount.
Did you finish it?
No, I'm at the very end though, so I probably will come back and finish that like I did with like Final Fantasy 12. And then I'm the same thing with Tales of Arise. I got to like the very end and I kind of just stopped one day and haven't gone back, but I plan to just to knock out the rest of the game.
Have you ever played a Tales game before?
I played Tales of Vesperia infamously when that came out, because that was when I was in college and all my friends had gone back to college already, but my school started late. So I just like spent like 3 weeks playing Tales. Like it was like just multiple days only playing Tales of Vesperia from when I woke up to when I went to sleep. And afterwards that was like the first time I ever experienced like, fuck dude, maybe you can play too much video games, you know? It felt really bad. I'm pretty sure I was depressed. But yeah, don't do that. I mean, some people can do it though. Some people can do that shit. You see some people play like the amount of video games they play. I'm like, fuck, dude. I feel like I play a lot of video games, but some people play like a lot of video. Like that's the thing about most streamers and shit who are like really big gamers and stuff. They play games on stream for like 6 hours and then they play games off stream. I'm like, how do you do this?
I like can't think of a game that's like worth that much time. Like
people who play like Hearthstone and like just hours and hours and hours a day. I'm like, oh, this is how you get to like the top ranks in Magic the Gathering or whatever game. And it's like, I don't want to. I'm okay with not having that.
I like, dude. I'm like at the point now where I like feel like I'm playing a lot of games. Like, man, I'm playing a lot. Like, how much of this game? It's been a long time. I look at the clock. It's been like 1 hour, and I'm like, fuck, man, I can't do it like I used to.
He can't.
It's like a fucking timer in my head. I'm like, after an hour, I'm like, I think I got what I wanted out of this. Like, I'm not like, I don't know. I don't find like a lot of intrinsic motivation from like a lot of games anymore. So I'm like,
I've been getting that sense too, where it's like, I know this happened to me with movies. What was the alpha? Oh my god,
Star Wars.
No, what was the movie?
Let him say what. Yeah,
I'm sorry. What was the black and white movie with the immigrants? No, it was. I think it was like
the Roma.
Roma.
It was like. Was it the new like Alfonso Cuarón movie?
Yeah, Roma.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Roma. I was like, damn, dude, this is gonna be heavy, and I don't want to watch it, but I really want to watch it. But the vibe, I was like, I felt like I needed to be in the perfect headspace to really like do it. And I still haven't seen Roma, dude. And I like Cuarón. I like that. It's like, it's so sad. Someone asks, sorry, Like a Dragon equals reference to Dragon Quest, right? Oh, I guess so. It makes sense because they talk about, Dragon Quest and whatnot.
One played 774 games of League of Legends in 34 days.
In Korea this past
fucking
month.
Hell, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. People talk about, streamers' jobs are easy, but it's like, you have to be one of those people who plays games that fucking much. Or is just like, these people do a lot. The thing
that just gets me is that like, there's like so few games that are like warrant that amount of like, it's like Magic and like maybe Elden Ring. But
for these people, it's like League of Legends. I mean, I did play thousands of hours of League of Legends, so I shouldn't really be one to talk, but yeah. I mean, it's also different when you have the social aspect of like you're playing with friends and whatnot, which is like probably why I put so much time into Valorant and whatnot. But let's talk about Naruto.
Yeah. Let's talk about Naruto. I saw that you actually completed Naruto, and I wanted to congratulate you because I have not yet made that journey myself, and I want to congratulate you on actually doing that because it feels like too much like homework to me.
Josh had like a tweet. It was like a tweet you posted like 4 months ago where it was like the opening shot of Naruto on Twitter, and you're like, what'd you say? Like
the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Yeah.
It's like
And
episode
yeah,
1, baby.
no, what's wild is that I like basically marathoned it too. Like I was watching 5 to 10 episodes a
You
day.
Naruto run like
Yeah, I
like
speed
Naruto.
run. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that show gets pretty recursive. Toward the end. I don't know how much y'all know about Naruto, but
I know about the headband, I know about the run, and I imagine it's like a shonen ninja thing.
it's a
I
great
know
show.
And
before
do
they
great.
before they did Shippuden, they had like 60 or so episodes of filler because they were waiting for the
Oh, I skipped all those.
the monk.
I
You
skipped
skipped
all
all
those.
those? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
I skipped all the filler, which, by the way, there's like there's literally about 300 episodes of filler in this show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I say filler, I'm not like, I was like, what? People would be like, oh, this is filler. And I'd be like, what are you talking about, man? There's character development here. This is like, the main plot's not advancing. But the thing is, the filler in this show gets to the point where it's literally just like, it's a different show. It's not really developing the characters. It goes out of its way to not develop characters because that would count as like tarnishing the main story. Because if they reveal details about a character or reveal motives that a character has that are outside of what the main manga line does, then there's some perversion of the main story and the sacredness of what the characters are, and Naruto gets extremely precious about these characters to the point where by like the end of the show, the character is just like a caricature of what they used to be, where it's like they're just trying to sustain the popular image of what this character is instead of like turning them into real human beings, which the show kind of excelled at in its early days. And that's what makes me kind of sad about the later days of Naruto. And I think a lot of people have this sense of the show too, which is that it just becomes a show about the characters of Naruto back in the day, like as you remembered them and who they used to be. And it's also weird because like toward the end, the last like 300 episodes are like one single event. They're covering one single event. And it's not the last 500. Did I say the last 500? I mean like the last 100. The last like 100 episodes are covering like a single event. And since they're dilating so much time over like 5 separate seasons, they start like acting as if the characters grew up, even though like only a couple months have passed. But we've experienced that over the course of 5 years. But I'm watching it over the course of like 3 weeks. So I'm like, what the hell? They're acting like the characters have turned into completely different characters. And it's only been a few episodes, It's a strange thing to watch this show now. But all this is to say, I'm now watching One Piece.
Right on time. Yeah.
Wait, can I ask why? Like, I've seen no Naruto, but I like know the headband and I know like Naruto is a thing. Why is it so big? What about this show makes it be this like cultural thing that shows up in Hot Topic?
I'm curious, what do you think about this?
What I think, I mean,
Yeah.
I have never like completed Naruto. I read Naruto like in Shonen Jump when I was like middle school, and I remember when it was like the part of the wave. It was like part of like I think the big 3 animes, what they used to talk about the turn of the 2000s. I think it was Naruto, it was Bleach, and it was One Piece. Like those were the big titles, and I think that is just. Naruto is a relatable character. It's like he's just sort of like a rags to riches, not a rags to riches, but a rags to at least respect shonen protagonist who progressively gets like stronger, and that the ensemble of the other characters that he's interacting with, they're just fun to follow. And also like the powers are really cool too. Like the battles and the actual animations are cool too. And it was such an interesting setting. Yeah, it felt like a torchbearer after Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z for that time.
Yeah, it's creatively, it's really neat in the sense that the setting is this like ninja world in which, like, you know, ninjas kind of exist. There's a political hierarchy of the world where there's like warlords, or there's like samurai that kind of exist in one section of the world. But anyway, there's just a lot of really neat creative design in how the world is laid out. This like contrast between the old and the new in a way that's like kind of very Japanese, like the old Japan versus the new Japan, and they're kind of like mashed together in this like ninja world. It's really neat. For me, what caught me about the series, and I think I want to say that this is one of the things that stands out about it, is that Naruto as a character is the delinquent child who is a delinquent because he's acting out due to some like trauma that he experienced in his life. And it's really touching because, I mean, all this happens in the first episode. I think if you watch the first episode of the show, you will get this about it. And a lot of this kind of carries the show for most of its run, is that his first teacher, Iruka Sensei, kind of takes him under his wing. Iruka Sensei doesn't really like him because he's just like Naruto's just an asshole kid who's just misbehaving, vandalizing shit all the time. And then he overhears this thing, and he finds out more stuff about Naruto and realizes that he's gone through these really like traumatic experiences as a child, and that's why he's doing this. And he like goes to protect Naruto, and he kind of saves Naruto from this dangerous encounter that they have, this dangerous situation. And like Naruto hears his teacher kind of standing up for him, and like he's kind of saying to this villain, like, you know, Naruto does what he does because he's had such a hard life, and like you don't know anything about him, and everybody hates him because he's like not well behaved, but like anybody would be if they were in this situation. And like Naruto overhears it, and he starts like just sobbing, and it's like a really touching moment. And that whole vibe follows the rest of the show, and that's like the beating heart of the show that makes you want to keep watching. And it just comes to a head in these big fights in such a satisfying way, where you always feel like Naruto has something to prove. You always feel like everyone is suspicious of him. It's really one of the best at framing this like misunderstood young man who has something to prove in the world, and to like show that he has value.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. I mean, he's burdened with, like, I remember enough from like the initial premise, like he's burdened with something that happened before he was born, and everybody just sort of ostracizes him for that. And now his classmates ostracize him for that. They didn't even truly understand the real story about what happened. Yeah. And so he's surrounded by this environment of toxicity, of just suspicion, of contempt, that he acts out in reaction to that, because, well, it speaks to like, well, everybody told me I was never going to be more than shit when I was growing up, so why not just be a little shit? Yeah. Kind of like that. And his teachers show him that there is another way, and that he can be more than that, what other people expect of him. And that's why I think, like, yeah, that's why that story resonates with people.
Yeah, and it's like it's neat too, because like it's about that, but it's also about the need for there to be like mentors for these kind of misguided young people, and there's just all these themes around it that I really dig, and that I enjoyed watching. And also just like the fights are really cool, and it's filled with shonen ecstasy moments, like the trademark shonen ecstasy that I've come to know and love. Naruto has some of the best moments of that. But yeah, does get the ending. It gets fucking weird toward the end, where it becomes about like, remember when I used to be such a misled young youth and all this stuff, and like you've grown so much, Naruto. So it's like, okay, dude, we know that's why we like the show.
We've been on this journey.
Yeah. But that's the whole thing, is that like at that point it's been 12, 10 years since this thing came out. So they have to kind of like remind the audience that's grown up with the show, like why they loved it in the first place. And that's, a lot of it. Ian says his growth is better paced, realistic feeling earned at the start, at least. Haven't watched the rest to comparable shows. IMO. Yeah, absolutely. It's just really satisfying to see him kind of make progress in this world that really doesn't like him. And One Piece is actually, it's pretty different. Have you seen One Piece?
I have not seen One Piece. This is where I admit to something. Like during the time when these came out, like I read manga and I was into movies and I was into sci-fi and art and other things like that. But around this time when those animes were just coming out, I was a lapsed anime fan. And so it's always been my my goal to eventually circle back and like really like dive into these, but I am conversant enough in them that I'm able to talk about like the general premise of them.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I am really, like, this is why I am doing this to a large extent, because like I like shonen, and you know, when you run out of some stuff to watch, I'm just like, all right, let's just start watching One Piece. But
is the idea of me as a lapsed anime fan is like hilarious.
No, I mean, it happens to us all every once in a while. I think it's natural. I think especially because at that time that like One Piece and Naruto were kind of starting, it was still fucking hard to get a hold of anime.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
You can, you know, sometimes if an anime is not on Crunchyroll or it's not on like Netflix or whatever, it's still pretty hard. But even back then it was way harder because like even pirating shit was tough. Like,
well, there's like Nya was like around and Nya got shut down.
Yeah.
Simulcasting didn't even really become a thing until like 2008.
Attack on Titan was like the big thing for what got me back into anime, is because like, oh, there's simulcasting and Crunchyroll's a thing and I can stream this stuff. And now anime is like so huge. It is wild. I have like aunts and uncles talking to me about anime, and it's a wild experience. But I mean, One Piece is quite a bit different from Naruto. I really dig it so far. It's just so much different than Naruto, but thematically, I would say that the main character, Luffy, is like so much different from Naruto. He's ignorant. He has that like ignorant innocence to him that Naruto has, but his character hinges a lot more than that. I think that the ensemble around him is just way better and more interesting, and there's just all kinds of stuff going on. There's some just really surprising themes. The gender politics so far, like for being as old as it is, are actually like, there's some interesting stuff being said in there. Naruto's gender politics are pretty fucking bad, but they're a little bit better in One Piece.
The one clip you were showing on the video was like a pink-haired girl like yelling at Naruto.
Oh,
I was like, I feel like I know where that character goes.
She's whoever made Sakura hates women. I mean, she's just such. They just basically like, at least she gets better. She does get better, but at the beginning they're just like, let's have someone that you were just annoyed by all the time, and let's just make her have all these like weird features that are just annoying. Anyway, are you watching Spy Family? What, like, let's talk about some more anime. Anime is good right now, man. It's fucking good. It feels like every season there's something that I am just loving the absolute crap out of, where I just feel down to wreck it to like normal people, you know, which is never a thing that used to happen with me with anime. Last season it was Ranking of Kings.
I'm opening up a list,
which did not really stick the landing, by the way.
Oh my god, I actually watched Ranking of Kings. The ending fucking sucked. But I want to hear the other recs. Give the listeners who don't know anime, give me like 5.
Like 5 from this year?
Yeah, we got Ranking of Kings,
Spy Family, 100%. You gotta watch Spy Family.
Demon Slayer Entertainment District arc.
Oh god, so good.
Is that different than the movie? Is that the movie?
Well, here's the thing. The movie released before the second season, and then you realize why they released it before the second season, because like the first 8 episodes of the second season are basically a re-edited version of Mugen Train, but with one extra episode that happens like before the events of it, and then they get into the story proper, which is like 11. So that's how they were able to cheat around that. But it's still good. It's still good.
Oh, so there's this. I didn't realize the second season was out.
Yeah. It's all out. Yeah. And
it's only 11 episodes.
I mean, if you watch Mugen Train, then yeah, just
it's basically another movie. Yeah, it's like basically another movie in episodic format. It's wild.
Yeah, it's really good.
We got Ranking of Kings, Spy Family, Demon Slayer.
I'm gonna put down the Orbital Children. I like the Orbital Children a lot. That is like Mitsuo Iso's like spiritual successor to Den-O Coil. And if you haven't watched Den-O Coil, that's on Netflix and it's really good and you should watch that. Like for a while it was just out of print, nobody could watch it, but like it's good.
I read your piece about like the anime, like the great anime of this year so far, and that's where I found out about the Orbital Children. I immediately watched it. And it's so good.
It is really good. It's really good.
I don't know if I talked about it on Bad End, but it does feel like sci-fi, and I said this on the Discord, which is that sci-fi feels so burned out in a lot of ways right now. Like so much of the creativity and imagining the future feels like it's just again settled into this. Okay, this is what doors look like in the future. Like they slide open and everything's fucking white. And it's like this minimalistic, clean look, maybe with some metal and steel with a seedy, dark underbelly.
The Alex Garland effect. The
Alex Garlandification of the future. But this movie is so creative with how it imagines technology and how people interact with technology and what it's like to actually be a human being in the future and how Orbital we will or will not relate to one another.
And also Den-O Coil as well too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really good and imaginative, and just like the amount of ideas that are in that movie. I feel like this must have been part of the fun and I guess the interesting thing about watching 2001: A Space Odyssey back in the day, in addition to it just being a gorgeous movie, extremely well directed, was you're just seeing stuff where you're like, oh my God, what if a spaceship could look like that? And there's still that kind of sense of wonder in watching it now because the way that it's imagined and how realistically it's rendered, just how well the vision is brought to life is still incredible. But this movie has some of that effect where I'm like, they've really imagined and extrapolated how like our technology will actually map onto the future. And a lot of it some of it feels plausible, but it's not necessarily going for that either. It's not trying to be like, this is what the future is going to be. Like
what the future could be if it went along like this particular track and like focused on like the way I feel like I can't talk about Orbital Children without talking about Den-O Coil. Because Den-O Coil, for when it came out, it was about AR technology. It was about visor technology and about like what if like that technology really took off and a bunch of kids just got up to some nonsense one summer and they started like investigating mysteries that are at the sort of precipice between the supernatural and the technological. And Orbital, and it's really good. It's very well animated. It's a slow burn, but it's very, very good. The Orbital Children, because it's a limited series, it moves pretty fast in its initial hours, and it throws a lot of stuff at you. Mm-hmm. But it feels like a spiritual successor in the way that it moves away necessarily from visor tech and more to like touch screen, like hand-based technology. It's like really, really cool. Yeah, it's dope.
Yeah, and when we talk about like what if or like what would happen if, like, what does the future look like? The questions, they're not trying to come up with like any singular answer. It's more of building the world in which this happens, and the insights and clarity and just I think the beauty of it all sprouts from the images and the interactions that you see within that. It's a really like Orbital Children owns. Devin asks, bro, is that Toussaint? Yeah, it is. That's Toussaint.
It's me. It's me. Hello.
Hello. But what else? Oh, other anime. My Dress Up Darling. Did you see that?
I've watched a couple of episodes of My Dress Up Darling, and I do enjoy it, but I want to get more into it.
I feel it's one of the ones that I
Josh,
have
that's an
to.
anime name that you're gonna have to qualify a little bit.
Yeah, you're gonna have to unpack that a bit. I know that make me feel.
I feel weird recommending that one too, because it is a little. It's a little sketchy, but at the same time, parts of like some things about it are extremely like this is where anime needs to be going, and then other things are like.
This is where anime came from.
What am I doing? Like, this feels sketch, you know?
Yeah.
It's very funny. The writing on that show is hilarious. Like, there are parts of that show where I'm just actually legitimately cracking up, which does not happen to me with television comedies. I rarely have those laugh out loud moments. And just the situational comedy in this show is just so, it's hilarious. But it's about this kid who is in high school, and he's kind of a loser because he grew up in his grandpa's. It's a Hina doll shop, so his grandfather makes these like traditional Japanese dolls, and the main character loves those dolls, and that's like his main hobby. It's his passion. It's what he wants to do. He wants to like carry on the family business growing up, and so he spends all of his time making dolls. And because of this, he's kind of like not an outcast at school. He's just kind of introverted. He doesn't really talk to other kids, but he's not shunned or anything like that, which is one of the cool things about this show. People aren't like, when people are jerks, they're not like being unreasonable bullies like happens in basically every other show in pop culture, I want to say. They're just like assholes in the way that they are more in real life, where they're like, oh, some kids were supposed to put away the chairs after class, but they were asked like, oh, do you think you could do that? Like, I'm in a big rush right now. But they wouldn't ask someone that they like really, really respected to do that. Where it's like that, or he just kind of gets walked all over because he's kind of submissive. He just kind of down with whatever. He doesn't really have that respect. But people aren't like outwardly like, oh, you're such a loser, man. It's not that type of thing. And then the main girl, Marin, is a huge otaku. She loves anime. She loves, specifically, she's really into like this eroge game, which is like an erotic video game with a bunch of like sex and stuff in it, which, okay, at this point is actually a realistic scenario. Like, this is a thing that I am sure that there are
Sex
high schools
exists.
who do that, who live these, maybe not these exact lives, but have similar things. But she's like a hot, popular girl, but at the same time, she doesn't feel like she fits in with everybody because her hobbies are pretty niche and not all of the girls are into that stuff. But she's like, has friends and is popular for that reason. A lot of people just don't understand the shit that she likes. So one day after class, they kind of meet up, and the main guy realizes that Marin is really into cosplay, and she's trying to make this cosplay, but she's really bad at it. So she finds out that he makes dolls and can do like tailoring and create costumes and stuff like that. So they end up linking up over these adjacent hobbies that are like sort of connected to one another, but that they don't really understand. One likes doing these dolls, the other likes doing anime cosplay. So they do not really understand each other's approaches, but they can both help one another, and they both understand each other because they have passion for such specific niche things. And that's what the whole show is about.
How many almost boob shots are we getting per episode?
Too many to count. Too many to count. Too many to count.
The number does not exist.
Yeah, but
there's no upper bound.
It's weird because it's conscious of its sexiness, I guess.
Yeah.
Where the girl will talk about she has this like costume that she's wearing that like where it shows like a good amount of cleavage, obviously, but that like that's a character that she's doing. She's like, she's a total ice queen, and she's blah blah blah, and she calls them boob bags. Like, she calls the things her boob bags. She's like, oh, these boob bags are great. Like, but like that's the whole thing, is that like they're talking about cosplaying a character who is sexy and she's trying to be sexy, and they refer
I
to
think
it in a
that's,
kind
like-
of cheeky way.
That's like better than the like I feel like I would describe a lot of like anime sexuality as like like
It acts like it doesn't know.
No, like it's
well, no,
it's
or
totally
it's like the
oblivious.
fucking like the
Yeah,
little
oblivious.
like the what's like the creature like the little shitbag in My Hero Academia that like
Oh,
throws the
Great
ball.
Boy.
Yeah,
Everybody
Great
hates
Boy.
Great Boy.
Yeah, everybody hates
But
that
like
kid.
Great Boy is like indicative of like what I would describe as most anime sexuality, where it's like someone calls someone a pervert and he's like kind of perverted, and so the idea of like this woman's just like I'm sexy and dressing up feels like it does something like it's moving the needle a little bit to be like I can be the sexy person, and like the show's like she's sexy, but it's not like this guy is like ashamed and like has to like act out like sexually or somehow such that it's like weird. It sounds like they're like have a friendship and maybe they like kiss in an episode or something, but it sounds like it is actually like
it
not
there's
like it's not the cringe shit, right? It's like I can like watch boobs in movies and that's like fine, but it's watching something where I'm like supposed to feel bad that someone has like a body, like that's the shit that gets us like it's weird, man.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
weird moments, but I would say that it comes from like the situationalness of it as opposed to, and just like what the fuck am I watching right now, as opposed to like it doesn't feel, I don't want to say it doesn't feel gazy because it's definitely like gazy, but it's like it's always like cognizant of what's happening. It's never like bullshitting you about what you're being shown.
It's not trying to like make you feel shitty for liking what you're seeing.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you're such a perv. It's just,
Yeah.
the main guy usually in the situations, he's like, dude, stop. Like if he's like, there's a sequence where he's fitting her for the stuff and he's like taking her measurements. It's a really funny scene because he's so explicit about like the awkwardness of it in every like part of it. And when he's like, oh my God, you just fucking don't touch her, dude. And then he's like, why am I getting so distraught? He's like, I just need to, he's thinking all these things in his head where he's just like, you just need to stop fucking stop being such a fucking little kid and caring that like you're taking a girl's measurements and just like be chill, like it's that kind of thing. That's like to the point where it's like it's somewhat relatable. Like if you were in that situation, you would have similar feelings. But it also, the other thing that I think is interesting about the show is that it also does give the point of view of Madi and the girl. She has like a lot of her own internal dialogue and like, oh my God, am I really feeling this way about this guy? Like, oh, he's actually hot and blah, blah, blah. There is back and forth. It feels like a show that
Also teen relationships are fucking messy. Like I don't know if you all were teens at one point, but like it's not easy.
like it feels like
No,
something.
I skipped all that.
Yeah.
I skipped all that.
It feels like something that like a high schooler could have like made or relate to.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good one. Odd Taxi is cool, but that's like last year, right?
Yeah, that's like last year. Yeah.
What else have you? What are the other good ones from this year so far?
Kaguya-sama Love is War season 3. That's really good. Kaguya-sama just in general, like every season has been great. This one has also been really good too.
I haven't seen
I could talk about some of the bad anime I've watched this year that I didn't like.
Can we talk about the end of Ranking of Kings? Because what the fuck?
Sure. Yeah.
That one, Josh, I think like that was, I don't know when it wasn't like, it was like a few episodes, I think probably before the hiatus, but you recommended Ranking of Kings. And then I watched basically all of it. And it was like, there was no ranking. No one got ranked. Spoiler.
There was a ranking.
Maybe like the very start, there was a rank.
Right.
It kept like, yeah.
The show starts in such a way where every episode makes you feel like anything can happen. And the imagination that's there is just out of control. And the tone is all over the place and the storytelling is all over the place. And when it hits you hard emotionally, it goes for it and it hits you. But it just slowly slips into just being a conventional story to the point where by the very end, it's like, okay, this is probably gonna happen. This is probably gonna happen. This is probably gonna happen. and
Or
a
like
lot
the
of it kind of
last, like,
does.
the like leading up, like the last 6 episodes are like, this guy's immortal, fuck, and the next one's like, fuck, this dude's immortal, shit, and the next one's like, damn, this dude's immortal, fuck. It's just like
Yeah.
nonstop, and then the fucking thing at the very end is just like,
Yeah. They stop doing the thing that they do at the beginning that makes the show interesting.
because it feels like it starts to like, you feel like it's about to paint this like very wide swath of like a cool fantasy. Like this is my fucking bugbear that I think I mentioned on this show before. I'm like, why is there not just a good long running fantasy animation show? Just like trad fantasy animation. Why is there not a show that's just that? Everything's got to have some like fucking weird twist on it. Like
It's
it's gotta be
like an isekai, or like I am a blob in an isekai anime. I've been transported to this world. I am a skeleton knight now.
but not even well exactly. It's never like, let's just have a fantasy story, like imagining like that. There's that show that is by the person who did Futurama, that has like this like fantasy show that I forget what the fuck it's called. It's like on Netflix.
Disenchanted.
Yeah, but it's like fucked, right? It's like Futurama humor, stupidity stuff, whatever, and it's like hard to watch for that. Or it's like Berserk kind of like gets the closest to this a little bit, where it's like, just give me like a trad fantasy show.
But then you have like the second adaptation that just kind of like totally.
I mean, that's all the bullshit, right? But it's like
the bed.
It's not it. But I'm saying like Ranking of Kings kind of had this feeling at the start where it was like, oh, this is gonna be like just a normal-ish fantasy show about going on an adventure in like a relatively trad fantasy world. I was like really excited about that. But then like Josh was saying, kind of over the scope of the whole show, the world just gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, where like the last like 10 episodes of the show, like the queen is like walking through a courtyard for 8 episodes to like meet up with somebody, and it's like all inside the castle walls, and it's just like, oh man, like I thought we were gonna go someplace cool, and we just
really did
the same place.
It really did switch gears like halfway through the series, like from core 1 to core 2. Then it just became like this whole like sort of like castle raid and just like this attempted coup, and I'm just like, I wanted to go back to the journeyman stuff where I was watching Boji get stronger and like growing and like yeah.
But it is still, I mean, I do still like the show.
I'll still watch it. I feel like it might go somewhere interesting. Like maybe that the sort of, I don't know, the initial conceit is like a little out of the way. Maybe there's like more, because it ends with Boji being like, I'm gonna go start my own kingdom, right?
Yeah.
So earlier David said One Piece is a whole different thing going on in relationship to Naruto, kind of like an amalgamation of fairy tales and trying to build the grandest adventure tale. And now that I, when he said fairy tale, I was like, that's an interesting way of putting it, because I haven't come across anything that's like a fairy tale yet. But I will say One Piece, it is, it's seen as like a pirate show, and yeah, it is about pirates, but it's a fantasy show in many ways, and it feels...
I've been thinking about trying to watch One Piece for this reason, because I'm like, maybe this is like the thing I'm kind of looking for.
Yeah, it could be that. And I didn't realize this before, but the first few seasons are actually like quote remastered. They have them you can watch them in HD. It's not great HD. Like there's times where you could tell they're just cutting stuff out of the image.
Machine learning HD upscaling.
It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
It's not that bad. It looks like fairly sharp. But it's like to the point where it's not like hard to watch. Like some 480p shit is like hard to watch, dude. Some of those early Naruto episodes where it's just on a square and all the animation is just bad. It's like, oh god. And I didn't realize this, but they had that 4:3 aspect ratio for a long ass time in Naruto. It went in through a good amount of Shippuden. It was like a year into Shippuden when they actually finally changed it, which is crazy. Okay, what else from this year? Attack on Titan is this year.
Let's see. Yeah, Attack on Titan was this year. I liked Attack on Titan, the final season, part 2. Please stay tuned for Attack on Titan, the final season, part 3.
It's so dumb.
Ridiculous.
When it didn't finish,
so
I was
angry.
like, are you serious? You're really going to do this?
Yeah.
that show has actually gotten even crazier. That show has gotten better since it started. Yeah. And people, you know, it's funny because Polygon was the site that back in the day did the whole like Nazi thing that I think a lot of people still like see the show as being like that Nazi it's like a Nazi show or something like that. Like the creator's a fascist show.
There was that. From the way that I looked at it and how I was like approaching the series when I was following it, it's like, you know, I understand these criticisms, but at the same time, like I think that this is still a visually and technically impressive anime, and for someone even who may have like reservations about it, I'm interested in watching this story unfold.
And also, I that's exactly where I was on this because and also in addition,
feels like a big anime event, and it's so feels uncommon to like be watching something at the same time as everybody else, and everybody's like talking about it. Even if I'm not like in the discourse, like I like to like follow that discourse and see what people are talking about.
And for me, it was like it also had yet to actually show me that it was a fascist show in any way, shape, or form, because it is pretty like anti-fascist. I mean, it's weird because it's like anti-ideology and like anti being too devoted to any single cause, because there's so many different people with different motivations that seem to be like somewhat validated in their actions, even when they're doing like atrocities. But I think that's kind of like what the show is about, where it's about like everyone's drunk off of something. Everyone's got their own thing that they're chasing, blah, blah, blah.
Like, can we ever break this cycle of just constantly like beating each other and just like finally move beyond it? And maybe we can't, and that's sad.
Yeah. But it's coming to a head in a very like it feels like the type of thing where this could go into End of Evangelion territory, where it's just like the world ends and weird apocalypse stuff happens. I could see that happening with this show.
That's not how I don't think that's how the original manga ended, but also I know that the reception to the ending to the manga was very split, so I'm very interested to see what the studio does with this final part.
Let's go, dude.
It'll be interesting.
Let's get Berserk Eclipse shit going on. I mean, just the way that the stakes have gone up feels like it's going there. And also just the world building is fucking insane. Like, just who thought of this shit, man? It's wild.
I gotta check that one out.
Yeah. But
I mean, all these, Josh, you sent me a list a while ago. I didn't watch it, but Rebecca watched it, and she was really into Mob Psycho, which I think was last year.
The third season is coming out this fall in October on Crunchyroll. So
that show, like the first couple episodes, like it didn't grab me, but then I started watching more. I was like, this is really like just what's happening with that show is just really interesting and cool, and thematically, it's really neat. I feel like we're in a bit of an anime golden age right now. Especially with how, you know, things are being adapted, and how popular it's getting worldwide. It's really neat. I mean,
it's funny it's getting so popular, but it's also funny trying to see like America reckon with its popularity in very American ways. Like, I don't know if you've gone to a Barnes and Noble recently, but there's like the like Japanese section. It's called something fucking stupid. It's like
some manga sections, like they got manga section.
No. It's okay. Like Land of the Rising Sun, and it's got some like fucking stupid name, and it's like all the like Japanese. It's not just like manga. Yeah. It's like the section where you go
catchy
buy
label.
Your like fucking. Yeah, it's like where you get your like Naruto headband and like Barnes and Noble. It's like this, like it's got this. I can't remember what the fucking name is.
History is curling back on itself, back to the era of cool Japan, and like just marketing things like, hey, this is from Japan.
Cool Japan. Yeah, it's exactly, like it's literally some shit like that, which is just like America just doesn't know how to fucking deal. Yeah. Which is, you know.
I mean, I think we can end this show on a conversation. Well, before we get to our listener mail, but could we talk about Isekai for a second?
Yeah.
Kyle, are you familiar with the?
I do not know what it means.
I think this is a job for Toussaint because I can explain, but it's
all right. Isekai is a subgenre of fantasy in anime and manga that usually starts out with a character in a mundane world. Sometimes they are a layabout. Sometimes they're a piece of shit. Sometimes they just don't have any ambitions or anything like that, right? And by some means, they are transported to a fantastical world. Sometimes it's them on their deathbed, right? And they wish to like go to some other place. Maybe they want to be transported inside of a video game. Oftentimes, they're hit by a truck. A lot of times, a lot of isekai animes begin with somebody getting hit with a truck and dying,
or stabbed.
Or stabbed, and then like you don't know whether or not is this all a death whisper in their mind as their soul leaves their body, or are they in a coma, or were they actually like somehow transported to another like dimension or universe or whatever, right? And then they have to like relearn the rules of this world, and at the end of it, they are either by some means or another, it usually ends with them either learning to cope with living in this world and making peace with that, or they are transported back to their mundane world, having been changed for this experience. It's like
I saw
there's like a 90s Dungeons and Dragons anime. No show. It wasn't an anime. It was just a television show. Just like look that shit up because that is basically the blueprint of like if you want to understand isekai.
I was watching
like Jumanji.
Or like the I don't know what it's called. It's like the Netflix anime about the guy who like designs bathhouses in Greece.
Oh, Termai Nove Rome. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Or Termai Rome Nove. That's it. Yeah.
Where he's like lives in like Roman era and then gets transported at the bottom of a bathhouse to like modern Japan. So he like studies modern Japan and like comes back and not dead, but like similar. Yeah.
There's also more details about this too. Is like there's more details about this subgenre too of isekai, which is that in many isekai the person is able to see like an interface as if they were inside of a video game.
That's some isekai. That's like video game specific niche isekai.
This is like, right there. But there's a good amount of these.
Yeah.
And if they do not have access to a specific graphical interface that pops up within the context of the show, if that does not exist, in many cases, there's some sort of leveling system where they are either overpowered or underpowered. In any case, a lot of isekai are formulated around some very distinct power structure that is most of the time based on video games and video game meta.
Did you all see Infinity Train?
I watched the first season. I really enjoyed it. I've been meaning to watch the rest of the series.
It gets better and then it gets worse, but this is like an American animated show, but it's sort of similar where basically there's like this sort of like Harry Potter night bus equivalent, but it's like a train that can just kind of pick you up and then you get on it and it's unclear if you're like in the afterlife or like where you're going, but to get off the train, there's like a number that you have. And so the number like goes to 0, but it's like unclear how the number actually gets manipulated. Sounds.
The reason why I bring this up is because of how video gamey isekai is in many cases. I feel like one of the prototype, and correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the prototype isekai was Sword Art Online, right?
Well, there's even before Sword Art Online, there was Dot Hack Sign. Dot Hack Sign was like it was very much. I feel like it was technically an isekai anime where it was about this player who was transported into this massively multiplayer online world, and for some reason they could not log out. They could not log out where everybody else was able to log out, and that was like the whole journey of like, why is it that this character cannot log out, and what is with this world that's all this shit is going on. Yeah.
Okay, but that is so. All this is to say that there is a massive genre of anime, and it's not even just anime because webtoons have a shit ton of isekai in them as well. But that is based around the video game power fantasy of progressing within a world that is not your own, except instead of you doing that via control and via like a controller and just existing in this kind of fake virtual world, you were actually transported there after death, which is, I just feel like there's so much there to unpack when we talk about the intersection of video games and anime. Because it's like, it's almost taking video games to the next step of like, what if video games were real? And the fantasy is like, what if my preferred fantasy was a real fantasy type of thing? And it also hinges off of the main power fantasy of video games, which again is that sense of constant progress and the vibe of like, you know, as long as you grind, as long as you keep clicking on the trees, you're always going to have a house, and you're always going to get better, and you're always going to do more and more and more. And it's just grafting that onto the concept of a show, and is really, I don't know, interesting to me. But I've been watching some isekai recently, like Rising of the Shield Hero. I'm not sure if you've seen that.
I haven't seen that one. Have you seen, what is it called? Mushoku Tensei. Mushoku Tensei, Jobless Reincarnation. I watched a good chunk of that. Yeah, that's a very problematic protagonist.
Yes,
but I also really like that world. Like,
the animation is ridiculously good on that show too, for how fucked up that show is. That show is like truly awful at times. Like when we talk about it being problematic. It's like, there's some stuff where I'm just watching and I'm like, this is I can't believe they're doing this. This is fucking awful. But the animation is incredible. It is an isekai.
The craftsmanship is beautiful.
It's so well made. That's one where the guy is like a total shut-in loser, 30-something, who has no life, and he gets transported into basically a fantasy RPG where he's super overpowered and has like a very natural mastery over magic. And his like
he's just like a natural like ability. It hasn't been harnessed yet, but like he has potential, which is something that is implied that he did not have in his prior life. And also like it gets more complicated. His now father in this universe is quite a person.
Okay, Forspoken, the PS5 game, is an isekai. What is that? What's Forspoken?
You never heard about Forspoken?
Listen, no PS5 games exist because there's not enough PS5s in existence to acknowledge them from a cultural perspective.
Oh my goodness! What
was the Remedy game that everyone says is really good?
Everybody says a Remedy game is good?
It was like, there was like the launch title. It was like the roguelike, super high production value, fighting aliens, PS5 game. I thought it was Remedy.
Control?
No, okay, it wasn't Remedy then. No, what was the...
The protagonist, Frey Holland, is a young woman who is transported from New York City to the fantasy world of Athia and uses magical powers to journey through it and survive in order to find her way home. Yeah, that's
pretty
isekai to me.
When you said Remedy, I don't know for what reason I was thinking Quantic Dream. I'm just like, Remedy doesn't deserve that. Okay,
excuse me. The game is called Returnal.
Oh, Returnal.
That was Housemarque, right?
Yeah, Housemarque. Yeah.
Returnal.
Yeah.
Wow.
You want to get to some listener questions?
Yeah, let's get
we got to do just a few. Forspoken.
But that's just gonna be so. Does she have a HUD in her? Like, dude, that would be sick. Actually, if like when you're in New York, like HUD. There's no HUD. It's just like walking sim, and then you get transported and you just got controls come out of her arm, and she has this whole graphical.
Forspoken's not even out yet.
Yeah, it's coming out in October.
Upcoming. upcoming release.
What
do we got? What do we got?
Steven asks, how was launching the game? Talked about the start of the podcast. How was getting the Rona, Josh?
Dude,
Damn.
we act like it's just like a sickness or like a cold.
It's not.
This shit sucks, man.
No, dude, people, it's bad.
It sucks.
It's not a good thing.
It's scary. It sucks. You get like brain fog that like, it's like also like, when you do drugs and you're like, when you smoke weed or something and you're like, am I sober again? Like what's the line? Like, when did I cross that line back into sobriety? Like what's real? The Charlie or David after dentist, is this real life thing? That or is this ever going to end type of vibe, but with the brain fog, the coronavirus brain fog. It sucks. And I've been vaccinated and boosted, and yet it's still sucked. And my symptoms weren't too bad. I had a fever for like 2 days, but then after that, the brain fog with the sore throat and general plugged faceness of it sucked. So I do not recommend it. Do your best to avoid it. Don't give it to people you love.
Also, the remission period or whatever is like 28 days. So even if you get it once, it's not like I've got antibodies and I'm good for a year. It's like less than 30 days. Get it again. David asks about how your tennis game is. It says, tell me about tennis games and your tennis game.
Oh, I actually have a relevant story for this. So I talked about Mario Aces on this show before, and I hated that game because and I swear to God, you can quote me on, you can go back and listen to this episode. But one of the things I like really did not like was that there's like a button for a slice shot. There's a button for a flat shot. There's a button for a topspin shot. And I'm just like, it doesn't explain to you like the concepts of tennis. It's never like tennis is a game where you hit the ball, like it never explains that shit. And it never explains like why one would want to use a drop shot or why one would want to use a flat versus a topspin shot. But now that I'm playing tennis in real life, by the way, Toussaint, this has been like a big hobby of mine over the past year. I was playing Mario Aces and I was doing so much better because I like actually know how tennis works now.
That's the reason to play tennis, is to get good at aces.
So you can get better at Mario Tennis Aces. Yeah, that's the only reason. No, it's but yeah, it was a cool feeling. And then also just love the crap out of this game. Like honestly, I have this sensation of constantly getting better. Which is not hard because like I just started a year ago. Yeah. And I watched like YouTubers who post videos of themselves playing games or something. It's like, can a relative new player beat a 5.0? And the new player has been playing for 6 years. So it's like, it's such a technique based game that like you need to be playing for like that long to really like start picking up on the nuances of how you actually play the game. So, but it's wild because you see people and they hit the ball hard, right? Like you see pros play and they're smacking that ball. But do you know how hard it is to hit the ball hard and like have it stay in? Like to get to that point, like
to know how hard you need to like hit the ball relative to where you are on the court.
Oh, it's not even just that. Like it's how you need to hit the ball technique wise, because in order to have it stay in, you need to hit the ball with spin, which means you need to be able to like brush up on the ball as you hit it, et cetera, et cetera. There's like a lot of complex things behind like how you hit the ball and how you get it to stay in. But all that stuff takes a very long time to learn because like you start out and your first instinct is not to hit the ball at all. You just want to deflect it back with your racket. Because if you hit it, it's like always going to go out, or you'll hit it outside of the I play with friends who it's like their first time playing and they're just constantly hitting balls out of the fences. Whereas like, I don't even really lose balls outside the fence anymore. But, then you have to like break that down and like learn how to like start actually swinging at the ball and like building that up, and then how to generate spin. There's so many details of how you can play the game and so many different types of shot that you can do, and then developing your own personal style. It's just really complex and cool game, and continue to learn. So it's also very relatable to people who play video games, because I feel like the arc of how you get better is similar to how one would in video games. But yeah.
You're saying you play tennis because it feels like you're in your own shonen series.
Yeah, I feel like it's a shonen.
Rise to the top.
Yeah, but we
Rise
got
to the top.
a couple. We got like just like a couple more minutes left. Let's maybe take one
All
more
right.
question and then we wrap up. Sorry, we'll save the other.
Ed hit us
leftover
with really
for
good
next
questions. We'll do one for each person. I'll do this one. How would you rank the BioShocks? I would rank them 1, 2, Infinite.
one. I never played
I feel
2.
like it's right.
But
in
I think
between.
like one.
Actually, no. I
one
like
and
Infinite. I think Infinite is a fun game to play, even if it has all its like political problems and shit.
Yeah.
1, Infinite, 2. All
I
right.
haven't played BioShock 1 or 2 in a while, and I replayed BioShock Infinite a while ago, like recently. I did not enjoy it. Did not enjoy it as much as I enjoyed it when it launched. Maybe I'll put it BioShock 2, BioShock 1, BioShock Infinite.
All right, this question's for you. Are there any music artists you'd like to make a game soundtrack?
That's a good question.
That's a good question. Now I'm just thinking about the French electronic artist Danger, who I think he made like a soundtrack for what's it called? Haven. It's called Haven. It's
Oh,
like,
I remember.
yeah, I remember
I
that
know
game.
Haven.
yeah. And he's even like a game model in that too. It's like I guess Flying Lotus.
I was gonna say Flying
Oh,
Lotus.
that would
be
I was literally gonna
sick.
say
Yeah.
Flying Lotus.
Yeah.
That would be sick.
Yeah. Flying Lotus on Silent Hills, directed by Hideo Kojima. we can all dream. We can all dream. Didn't say it had to be realistic.
Last question's for you. Can you think of any game adaptations of books, and if so, what are your favorite?
What? Dante's Inferno.
Great way to end the podcast. Thank you, Toos, for being on the show.
Of course, thank you.
Dude, thanks for coming on. Where can people find you? And maybe if there's anything you want to plug?
Let's see. You can find me on Twitter at the Saint of Tous, Tous. And you can find my writing on Polygon.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being here again. We are Bad End Podcast. We will continue to be putting out cool stuff. Check out our merch. Going to be dropping soon. Enjoy our new design. Just find us on Twitter at Bad End Podcast. Wait, no. Is it Bad End Podcast?
I think it's Bad End Podcast.
Yes.
Because the
Bad End Podcast. Our email is badendpod@gmail.com. Patreon.com/badend. Rate us and review us on iTunes. Check out all of our friends at Superculture, also doing amazing things. Congrats, Zach Coetzer, on becoming an editor over at Lock On. Freaking love that magazine. Funland coming out. Dude, we got so many great things. Heterotopia's new issue coming out soon.
Oh yeah.
Just check out all of our
came out
stuff.
today.
We've got some amazing things in the pipeline. Continuing updates for Cantata. And check us out. Tell your friends. Tell your friends.
Tell your friends.
We'll be here. Later.
See you. Bye.